Welcome to this virtual education session, Steps to Improving Your Diabetes Control, Checking Your Insulin to Carbohydrate Ratio. We will cover what is an insulin to carbohydrate ratio, factors to consider when checking your ratio, how to check if it is correct, and we will go through some examples. Firstly, let's go over what an insulin to carbohydrate ratio is. An insulin to carbohydrate ratio allows you to work out your fast-acting insulin dose depending on the carbohydrate content of your meal or snack. This can give you more flexibility with your food choices, as you will not be on set doses of fast-acting insulin at mealtimes. Your insulin to carbohydrate ratio depends how sensitive your body is to insulin. This can change over time, therefore we recommend checking your ratio. If you do not currently carbohydrate count or use a ratio but would like to learn, then please contact the Forth Valley Diabetes Dietitians and we can support you to do so. We recommend that you check your ratio if you have frequent high or low blood glucose levels after meals. To make sure that you are accurately checking your ratio, it is important to consider the following factors. Before checking your ratio, make sure your blood glucose is steady between 5 and 7 millimoles. Ensure the last fast-acting insulin was taken at least 4 to 5 hours previously to make sure there is no active insulin present. Only check your ratio when you know your basal insulin is correct. If you're not sure, then you'll need to check your basal insulin. See the virtual education session on this if you're unsure. Only check when you are feeling well. Do not drink alcohol or exercise when checking your ratio. Avoid eating high-fat or high-carbohydrate meals, for example pizza, macaroni cheese or a chippy, as these foods take longer to digest due to the fat and can cause your blood glucose to continue to rise after 4 hours. Don't snack within the 4-hour period of checking your ratio. How to check your ratio. First, check your blood glucose before your meal. Secondly, accurately calculate the carbohydrates in your meal and use your current ratio to work out your dose of bolus insulin and take as normal. Then, after 4 hours, check your blood glucose again. If your blood glucose is within 2 millimoles of your pre-meal blood glucose result, your ratio is correct. We recommend waiting for 4 hours before checking your blood glucose reading, as if you are using a blood glucose reading from 1 to 2 hours after your meal, the insulin will still be active. If your blood glucose is higher or lower than your pre-meal blood glucose by more than 2 millimoles, you may need to alter your insulin to carbohydrate ratio. Remember that before changing your ratio, monitor your blood glucose regularly and check for patterns. Do not change your ratio on one reading. Let's now look through some examples. For these 3 examples, we will be using a starting insulin to carbohydrate ratio of 1 unit of insulin for every 10 grams of carbohydrate, and we will be adjusting this accordingly. You can use your ratio if you would like to follow examples and try to think what you would adjust your ratio to. We will be following the blood glucose target guide below. You may have your own individualised targets that you can aim for, therefore use these when looking at your ratio and blood glucose results. For the first example, this person's blood glucose prior to their meal was 5 millimoles. They calculated their insulin dose for 40 grams of carbohydrates as 4 units, and then measured their blood glucose again 4 hours later. Their blood glucose had risen to 6.2 millimoles. This rise is not more than 2 millimoles, therefore the dose of insulin calculated using the ratio of 1 to 10 is correct and no changes are required. This is what this may visually look like on Libre View. You can see that there has been a rise in blood glucose after the meal, but the blood glucose has relatively quickly come back down and remains within target and similar to that of their pre-meal blood glucose level. For this example, this person's blood glucose is 4.8 millimoles before the meal and fast-acting insulin dose. However, 4 hours after, it is 9.5 millimoles. This suggests that using the insulin to carbohydrate ratio of 1 to 10 grams here was not enough. If this happened frequently, then a ratio of 1 unit of insulin to every 8 grams of carbohydrates might be more suitable, which would result in 6 units being taken rather than 5 units. We can see here what this would look like on Libre View, with the blood glucose staying above target after the meal. For this third example, when using a ratio of 1 unit of insulin for every 10 grams of carbohydrates for this meal, after 4 hours the blood glucose has dropped and caused a hypo. This suggests that using this ratio of 1 to 10 grams, and therefore an insulin dose of 7 units, was too much in this example. Therefore, a ratio of 1 unit of insulin for every 12 grams may be more appropriate, which would result in only 6 units of insulin being taken for this meal. Here is the visual graph of what this would look like. As mentioned, when checking your insulin to carbohydrate ratio, it is key to look for patterns. Therefore, we recommend that you complete a food diary for 4 to 7 days. This is an example of the information that you would want to fill in. This will allow you to check if you are carbohydrate counting accurately, the timing of your insulin doses, and any additional information which may be the causes of some higher or lower readings. Please get in touch with us if you have any queries regarding the information in this session, or if you'd like any help with checking your insulin to carbohydrate ratio.